Hi there guys, thanks for joining me again. I'm out and about as you can see today, slightly different to my usual because, well, it is such a lovely day, but I didn't want to waste any time in telling you guys everything I want to tell you. So, as I'm recording this, it's the 3rd of June, it is pre-order day. I've been down at Warhammer and they have all of the rulebook and the new starter box and all the new indexes laid out so you can just read them and have a look at the rules, which is pretty cool because I thought they'd be keeping a bit more tight-lipped about that until it actually came out. But you know, Games Workshop has changed. It's a new Games Workshop, so you can get down there and have a full look at the rules, which was absolutely fantastic. So I didn't spend too long because the queue is very long. A lot of other people wanted to get in and have a look, so I just had a quick glance through the Xenos 2 book, which contains Tyranids and Genestealer Cult. As far as I can tell, Tyranids and Genestealer Cult are basically more like just factions of the same army. I'm not entirely clear. I didn't get a chance to look at the rule book, and in particular how allying works now. But it did seem to be more along those kind of lines. Anyhow, looking at the Tyranids army, there's a few things I've picked up on. Now, at this point, I don't want to find out everything from the book, because I'm going to be picking it up in a couple of weeks, and you know, I want to still have some surprises waiting for me when I open it. And at this stage, all the leaks that come out are almost certainly going to be true because they're going to be verifiable. You know, people will have seen it, people will probably snap some pictures. But I don't want to have the whole thing before I actually get it. You know, I want to have some things to look forward to. But with that in mind, there are a few things I saw today and I want to share them with you. First things first, Hive Tyrants. They now have a 5-up invulnerable save that they didn't before. Very cool, very necessary. Also, along with their new wound stat, which I think is up at 12, much more survivable unit from the sort of looks of what I've seen. Yeah, so he's looking pretty good. Other rules within his were more or less what you'd expect, except, and this is quite exciting, he has a really cool special rule that's basically like it's a final attack. So if he dies or gets dropped to 0 wounds at any point, all units within 3 inches of him take this attack that is essentially him lashing out in his sort of death throes, and it causes mortal wounds, and it looks, yeah, pretty cool. So I would say if you're close to dying, if your Hive Tyrant is on his last legs, you could just send him careening into a few different units and see if you can't take a few more people out with you. Very cool, very fun, very cinematic actually. It's nice to see that in the balancing of the rules they haven't entirely got rid of some of the whimsy and the you know, coolness of it really. So I also had a look at Genestealers. They're much as I described them in the video the other day, likewise with Tyranid Warriors. Tyranid Warriors are probably the most surprising in so much as they've changed the least. And I really expected them to change a lot more, but I think when we actually get playing with them, they'll feel a lot different. That's my feeling on the subject. Carnifex was, again, just what I expected from the video I put out the other day. So that leak is confirmed to have been true. So they start at strength 6, but they can double to strength 12 with Crushing Claws. So I would imagine taking them with Crushing Claws, from what I can see, is still going to make them the strongest choice in the book in terms of literal strength. A quick look at Trigon's Morlocks. The main thing I saw there was high wound statistic. Nothing seems to be higher than Teravagon, who's got 14, so Teravagon is now basically our tank. Also interesting, it seems to be a general thing with reserves. It doesn't seem like you roll for reserves anymore, it seems like you pick when they come onto the board. There are some fairly strict rules in terms of how many things you can have in reserve, so there'll be no more null deployment. There's also, yeah, I think you can't leave them till the last minute either. So what that means for Moloch, I didn't get a full chance to read his rules. We'll have to see, because obviously before you could just keep burrowing and popping up and burrowing and popping up. So if now that would mean that you can only do it for 3 turns, then I'd imagine Moloch's going to look a bit less useful than he was before. So aside from that, I had a quick look at Hiveguard. Of particular interest to me was sort of what strength their weapons are and what sort of damage they're doing. So they seem to be staying around strength 8, and they seem to be doing D3 damage per sort of valid hit or valid wounding roll. So again, they're going to be looking to be your mid-range sort of vehicle killer for killing skimmers and light tanks, rhinos, things like that. I wouldn't imagine you'll be wanting to use them on super strong units, or at least that's not going to be your main source of vehicle destruction for things like monoliths. I mean, to be honest, I think Tyranids will be relying a lot more on close combat to take out tanks and whatnot now, because, for example, the monolith has 20 wounds. So you're going to want something maybe like a Carnifex or something that can actually realistically cause a lot of wounds to it and do a lot of damage to it in one given turn. As I said in that last video, I think they can do about 15 wounds to a single unit. So, maybe within a couple of turns, you could take one of those out with a single Carnifex, or easily take it out with a couple. So already I can start to see this sort of scaling up they've been talking about, which I'm quite excited for. I think they really seem to have done something quite good here. The final thing I want to discuss is actually the thing I'm the most excited about, which is the Lictor. So if, like me, every time you've taken a Lictor in the last 4 editions, certainly since 5th, I would say, I've just been always disappointed with how they play. They're not as strong as you want them to be. They die very, very quickly. In close combat, they were always kind of akin to Gene Stealers, but they were just more expensive and more of a target. And while their chameleonic skin rule has always been really cool, and their pheromone trail, very rarely do I get much use out of them. A couple of times I've kind of used them as teleporting homers, homing sort of beacons, but again, generally they're not that useful, and it's a lot of points for something that you're still relying a lot on luck to be able to pull off, I think. But now the chameleonic skin rule has changed, so you hide them, or they have a hiding spot somewhere on the board. Now, as to whether or not you have to specify where that is before the game, or as to if you basically just pick it at the time, they come on following slightly different rules to your normal reserves. So basically, at the end of a movement phase, which is kind of their only drawback because they're not going to be able to move that much, you can pop them up and say this is where they were hiding. They're now in play. They can then have their run action, which I think is called advancing, or is advancing movement, I'm not sure. But they can then have that action, basically, to run, and then they can assault that turn. They also get a re-roll on their assault. So the idea is, once again, and finally, they're an ambush unit again. They're not, they're not what they were, which is basically, so hampered by the rules of reserves that they couldn't, they didn't really have a function. I feel like for a while GW's kind of been scared of them, saying, well, if I let you assault with them on turn 1, then they would be overpowered. But I don't think they would have been, to be truthful, on reflection. And now we're going to see that, because they are going to be able to potentially appear and assault turn 1. So you're going to be able to pick out the things at the back of the board, or whatever it may be that you really want to get rid of, or at least that you really want to tie up. So that's about it from me. That's everything I saw, and it was all very exciting, and I cannot wait. If I see anything particularly pressing in the rumours, I'm sure I'll report it to you guys, but otherwise I'll be doing a video on the day I pick it up, obviously doing a bit of a first impressions and you know, revealing what else we've seen. So thanks for watching, guys. Thanks for the continued support. I'm really glad that there's a lot of people still watching, so I'll see you guys in the next video.